All righty. Hello, everyone. Dr. McMahan, I see a 202 number. Is this you? Let me continue to admit folks.
This is Dr. Mack. I'm on a 202.
Okay. All righty. Just making sure that that's you. Thank you. I am going to, so I have to admit folks into the call. So I'm going to continue to admit for the next minute. And then we will go ahead and begin the discussion. So thank you everyone for joining today. All righty, so we'll go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining Black Professionals in International Affairs today as a part of our leadership series. We are really excited for our speaker today, Dr. Arthur McMahan, who is the Senior Associate Director with the White House Initiative for HBCUs. My name is Alexandria Maloney. I'm currently a BPIA board member, and I'll be moderating this talk today. So the thoughts and views of our guest speakers are their own. And if you haven't already followed Black Professionals in International Affairs on our social media, please go to our website to find more information on that. And lastly, we are encouraging viewers and listeners to submit any questions that they may have or may want to ask in the chat box for this conversation, and I'll do my best to include those questions. So without further ado, I will introduce our speaker. Dr. Arthur P. McMahan is the current Senior Associate Director for the White House Initiative for Historically Black Colleges and Universities. He most recently served as the Director of VA Anti-Harassment Program, Deputy Dean of Veteran Affairs Learning University at the Department of Veteran Affairs, and as the Director of Educational Services and Strategic Planning at the U.S. Army Management Staff College in Fort Belvoir, Virginia. His expertise and experience include strategic planning, institutional research, and performance management. He is a Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award Examiner, served on the U.S. Army Training and Doctrine Command Accreditation Team, taught ROTC at Virginia State University, and is a past member of the Board of Directors for the Washington Area Corporate University Consortium. So Dr. McMahan, thank you so much for speaking to us today.
Thank you for having me, Alex.
So I'd like to start off by asking, how is the current COVID-19 situation affecting the work that you all are doing with the initiative?
Okay, and before I start, let me just say thanks to you for allowing me this opportunity for your audience, and also to inform your audience of what a great, intelligent, resourceful, connected intern you were for the White House Initiative on HBCUs when you were with us. I honor and appreciate your work, and I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that that's part of your background being with us.
Thank you so much for that.
Well, like all leaders, adapting to the situation on the ground, to put it in military terms, is what we do. And since COVID-19 presented the situation where we had to telework, that meant sort of rethinking how we do business. Our primary audiences are the 100 HBCU presidents, administrators, staff, and the 34 federal agency partners with the United States government, and then various private partners. And so what we've done is I've structured a two-a-day touch point with my team, 9 o'clock and 2 o'clock. So we update each other, we stay connected, we talk about what we have going for the day and for the week. And what I've found is that gives us a sense of team and community that, had I not done that, would have probably been absent or lacking, because, you know, humans need touch, human needs to be connected. And I think especially a team where you are expecting teamwork, that there is important for us to stay connected. So we have held numerous conference calls, one-on-ones, touching. I have a touch point with my boss every Tuesday. And so what we found, Alex, is that the atmosphere or the environment around connecting through technology drives us to actually seeking more connection. And we have been meeting with people. People have called us, probably more so than even when we were in the office, seeking our opinion or decisions or participation in certain acts. And again, we are a 5-person team, and I have 2 interns now, and we have 1 executive director that is sitting at the White House right now. He's a presidential appointee. The rest of us are federal career employees. So back to your question, it's impacted it greatly because I haven't been in the office since, for 2 months, for 9 weeks actually, and you all probably don't know this, but I haven't had a haircut in that long either. And so for an ex-military guy who gets a haircut every week, that's sort of a different type of thing for me. So that's sort of how we are operating and what the COVID-19 situation has driven us to.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm sure there's someone around who can help, you know, get the edges right, you know, get.
No, because my wife has asked me and volunteered, and I have said, how about no?
Right.
No way.
You'll just wait it out.
Anybody that's not trained and has like 20 years experience is not going to work on my hair. So Thank you for that.
Yep. Got it. So could you share more about what the White House Initiative for HBCUs is, and some of the work and programs that the initiative does for folks who may not know?
Sure I can. So I mentioned earlier that we are 5 career staff and 1 presidential staff. We exist under an executive order, 13779, and the significance of that is that every president since Jimmy Carter has reissued that executive order, which establishes an office that's supported by the Department of Education. And until this year, we weren't supported by the White House directly, but the White House this year in the executive order wrote in that the executive director would have a footprint over in the administration. Our primary mission is to strengthen the competitiveness of our 100 HBCUs by collaboration with federal partners and private partners. The reason we target federal partners is that each federal agency has a large pot of funds that is available for higher education. It is our position that HBCUs have not shared rightly in that amount over the years, and so we focus on connecting HBCUs with the grants, contracts, etc., that are owned by the federal partners in order to enhance their service to the community. We also do the same thing with private industry, but our primary focus is federal partners because the pot is so large and is so uneven with the distribution to HBCUs. And so we also work with 3 advocacy groups whose mission is to support HBCUs, private, public, and other. And that is...
She's on the...
Say again? Oh, okay. Am I still good? Hello?
Sorry, I realized mine was muted as I was responding. We had some feedback from another caller, but you're coming through clear.
Okay. And so I was saying that we also work in concert with 3 advocacy groups that support HBCUs, and that's NAFIO, Thurgood Marshall, and the United Negro.
NAACP?
No, not the NAACP, but
United Negro College Fund?
Let me just clarify. I just had a brain drain on that. But those groups work with us, and they work directly with their sets of universities, and their job, again, is to represent those universities and try to enhance those universities' participation in funding and other strengthening activities that support the HBCUs and the community.
Great, thank you. Could you share a little more about what the, because with Black Professionals in International Affairs, we're always excited to speak to folks who have some connection or proximity to the international space. And I know that you're over the International Affairs Working Group. So maybe you could tell us a little bit more about what that group is, and some of the agency partners involved and the sorts of things that are done through that working group.
Okay, so back to my previous brain freeze. Yeah, United Negro College Fund is,
Okay.
Is the other group that we work with. And so several years ago, we came upon an article in a magazine called Diversity Abroad, and it was addressing the lack of participation by HBCU students in study abroad. And so they listed like the top 100 or so schools that had viable programs in diversity abroad, and we found that we weren't represented. And so we set out to establish an international affairs, which we now call a cluster, but it was just an international affairs group, to strengthen and enhance HBCU's footprint in international affairs. And that includes study abroad, exchange programs for faculty and students, research abroad, teaching abroad, bringing students from various countries to get the experience here in the United States, and also memoranda of understanding between countries and our department on how to exchange students, or providing opportunities to exchange students. And so right now, within our International Affairs Cluster, which is chaired by David Levin, who actually works in the State Department, it has USAID, State Department, and Foreign Agricultural Service. We also work with the Council on Foreign Relations. They are not an actual member, but so any agency that has within their mission working with foreign countries, especially in the areas of education, we've invited to participate in our International Affairs Cluster. And so when the Department of State has any events with HBCU students or minority students or minority serving institution students, we try our best to participate in that and share with them what we're doing and try to accentuate whatever it is they're doing. Like, for example, scholarships are numerous in the international affairs arena, especially coming from the Department of State. So what we do is we post those scholarship notices and applications on our website. We facilitate conversations between schools and the Department of State and whomever the representative is with those particular jobs. Now, I left out Peace Corps, but Peace Corps also plays a large role in the International Affairs Cluster, of course, because of all the opportunities they provide internationally for HBCU students and faculty.
Right. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I'd encourage all the viewers and listeners that are on, for those who are interested in learning more, feel free to go to the website for White House Initiative for HBCUs, but also doing more research on, federal agency opportunities, study abroad opportunities, things that are in relation to international affairs. As Dr. McMahan mentioned, they are plentiful. To name a few, there's, the Boren Scholarship, Pickering, Wrangell. There's many that are foreign affairs related, Payne, Payne, through USAID. and a number of other opportunities that are worth exploring if you're interested in, you know, international affairs communities, international affairs opportunities, and as a member of the HBCU community. So I would definitely encourage anyone who's interested in learning more about that. I see one
Hey, Alex,
person. Yes.
Alex, one other thing before we move on.
Mm-hmm.
Fulbright scholarships, Fulbright scholarships
Right.
make up a big part of that portfolio also. But what I wanted to say that I probably should have said at the beginning is one of the reasons we are interested in international affairs is that we are encouraging our students to be global citizens. And if you live in a small or large community within the United States and you never get out of it, it's very hard for you to be a global citizen. We understand the advantages of being a global citizen is meeting people from different cultures, experiencing different languages, food, and societies. And so the International Affairs Cluster, with that understanding, is trying to strengthen the opportunities that HBCU students have to become citizens of the world or world citizens.
Yes. Thank you so much. And I see in the chat there's some light conversation where folks are putting information about different scholarships. So thank you for that. As I continue on, so Dr. Mack, my next question is, I know that you have a lot of experience in leadership and in publishing of different, you know, leadership related articles and readings. So what is your leadership philosophy? Like, what's your go-to as you have been both in the military space and the civilian space?
Okay, so if there's one word that I would use to describe my leadership philosophy, would be facilitator. I'm a facilitative leader in that my job is to encourage and promote dialogue, discussion, and accomplishments from my team, no matter where I am. And so as a leader, not only is the mission important, but the individuals are important. Some great writer, I think it may have been a general from the United States Army, once said that for a leader, there are two things that are important: mission and people. And the most important component is people. Your job as a leader, my job as a leader, is to not only accomplish the mission, but it also is to develop each individual to their highest potential. And so if you're part of a group where the leader does not focus on that, then that's an example of what not to do as a leader. As a leader, I have to look at each individual where they are, help them to assess what they need to do to make it to the next step. Sometimes that will mean, a lot of times in the federal government, that'll mean losing them. But you prepare people for their next job as part of leadership. And so understanding human behavior, a great part of it, being able to talk and listening probably one of the top skills of a leader. And I wrote an article once, and I conducted some classes at a couple of VA sessions called PQ, People, Process, and Performance. And I'll just give you a brief summary of why I think those things are important. And what I said was those are multipliers. So multipliers, success multipliers for leaders. And people is, first of all, understanding who you are, where you come from, right, your strengths, weaknesses, and limitations, but then also understanding the psychology of humans and human interactions so that you'll be able to deal with the people that work with you and for you. So that's the people part. Process is understanding what it is that you do. How many people have worked for a person who was leading the team and you declared that they probably didn't understand what you were supposed to be doing. So understanding what the mission is and how to accomplish it, a very large part of leadership. And that's why leadership is a curve. Normally, or a lot of times when you walk into a situation, you won't know everything you need to know, but you need to make it a priority to learn the ins and out of the business so that you can adequately lead the team. And then finally, performance. Performance has two components. The first component is how well your organization is doing toward the accomplishment of your mission. If you don't measure it, you don't know. So if someone says, well, how are you doing? And talking about your team, then you need some type of metric that you can refer to that explains or depicts how well you're doing, but which also gives you information on how to improve. And the second part of that performance is individual performance. And I'll tell you, as a leader, the toughest part of our job is to evaluate individual performance, especially on an annual or semi-annual basis. That's tough in every way you can think of, because it's very difficult to look a person in the eye and say, you're not meeting the standards, you need to improve this. The easy part is when people are very successful and high achieving. But having that come to Jesus meeting on performance for individuals is tough. And it has caused me consternation throughout my career, but it's a challenge that you have to meet. The best way to meet that challenge is to do periodic reviews and touch points with your people. And if they aren't doing what you expect or what they need to do, point it out at that point so that the next point when you talk, you can say, I told you then you were doing this or weren't doing that. Here we are now. You're better or you're not better. And so people, process, and performance are the three leadership multipliers that I share with people when I talk about leadership.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing those. We're getting some pretty good feedback here in the chat feed as you're speaking. Thank you so much, and such great leadership values from some viewers here. So next, could you speak on your experience and speak on the importance of mentorship? So have there been, fundamental mentors in your life, and how can a young person identify mentorship? What's the importance of that in one's, professional journey?
First of all, that is a terrific question because the journey of your life is what has gotten you to right here, wherever you are. So whoever you are, wherever you are, everything that happened in your past is how you got here. And one of the things I learned early was to reflect backwards and thank and appreciate the people who touched my life in significant ways. Sometimes I didn't realize how significant it was, but it's important to accentuate those people who you can tell made a difference. When I was in the 4th grade, and this is a story I tell to my team, Alex, you probably heard it, and it's not necessarily a soothing story, it's a challenging story, but when I was in the 4th grade, there was a young man in my class who was 16, and he didn't always use the proper hygiene. So in other words, he smelled a little bit in class. So imagine he was however tall you are at 16, and we were in the 4th grade. And so my teacher was Mr. Martin. I never will forget it. He called me up and he said, I need you to take Charles down to the gym and make sure he takes a shower. Now, imagine like a 3-foot, I don't know how tall I was, but 3-foot something guy talking to a 5-foot guy that probably had a mustache and was starting a beard and telling him that he needed to take a shower. But what looking back on that, Mr. Martin was saying to me, I see your leadership. I see your compassion, your empathy. I know you have it, and I need you to exercise it here. That event has stood with me, and I share that with a lot of folk because as simple as that may have seemed, that was what first alerted me to the fact that I must be a leader. I must have some leadership ability. And so when you can offer experiences like that to people coming behind you, then you are then paying it forward and developing young leaders and young minds in your own mold or based on what you understand their needs are for, especially the children in underserved society, what they need to be successful. And so he was a teacher. Almost all of the people who had that type of influence on me were in teaching situations. In college, I had a professor who gave me a work study job and told me to just read books. She was like, there's a lot you need to know, and the way you find it is in books. And she was an Afro-American studies, they called it at the time, professor. And I cherish her to this day. She's gone on, but she opened my eyes to so much, and she was so brilliant. And you know, when you can share your brilliance, if you have it with people, that touches them. People love to sit at the feet of people who really know a lot of stuff, and is okay sharing it with them. And that's what I try to do in my life. Every opportunity I get with young people or even with older people, I try to share where I'm from. You know, I came from, and this is a cliche almost, but I was the first person in my family to go to college, which didn't mean anything to me at the time. But looking back, it meant something because a lot of people in my family have gone to college since me. And part of the reason is because I went. And then starting out, I was the worst student you can imagine. So my first semester at college, I had a .989 GPA. I played basketball and I lived at home, and I didn't connect to what I had moved into. I wasn't aware of the requirements of being a good student. And so it took me 2.5 years to get up to a C average. And that's so tell your students, tell your people, tell your children, don't get in a hole, because it's very difficult to get out. But the thing I look back on, or thing I like about what I did after that, was I eventually earned a PhD from Virginia Commonwealth University. And starting where I started and ending where I ended, there was a big gap, and a lot happened, but tenacity was what brought me through that, understanding that I could achieve anything and that I just had to stick to whatever it was in order to get out of it what I needed. And so my mentoring has come primarily from people within the educational community. But one thing about mentoring that you probably won't hear from too many people is that people in your lives will teach you more about leadership by what they do that you shouldn't do than by what they do and you should do. And so when I look back and I've seen people with great potential fall by the wayside because they didn't have the stick-to-itness in them, or they didn't have a vision for themselves. That taught me that I needed that. When I've seen people who treated their employees and people with disdain and with no respect, I've seen that. And what that taught me was that that's something I never wanted to do. When I've seen people yell and scream as leaders, I was like, I would never do that. And I have never, ever yelled and screamed at a person that worked for me. And, you know, and that's almost 40 years of leadership. And so you learn as much from those who set bad examples as you do for those who set good examples. You just have to recognize that, hey, that's not something that I want to do. That's not me.
Great, thank you for answering that. We have a question from a viewer that asks, what are your suggestions and recommendations for organizational culture change? Values and visions are great. Implementation and accountability from various ranks is a challenge. So if you had any recommendations on maybe organizational cultural change.
Yeah, I've thought about that a lot. I've worked with facilitators from large corporations that deal with organizational culture and change. And so it's a very difficult thing, y'all. So, the probably a primary thing when you're talking about organizational culture is trying to identify that it is a bad, toxic, or good culture. Because I mean, some cultures are good. So if the culture is not positive or is not good, then you have to drill into it and try to figure out what are the things that's making it bad. And I can tell you, most of the time it's going to be people. Most of the time it's going to be individuals. So one of the best things you can do is set up some type of accountability system for leaders that say, this is how we act. This is how we conduct business. And I talked about performance before. So part of a bad culture in an organization is people either not being held accountable or people being held too much accountable for things that they don't control, et cetera. And so understanding as a leader what it is that you need to be doing. So I would say for a leader, you must set that vision or that mission and vision for your organization. But also behavior is important. So as a leader, I should do these things. If you want to get really simple, so I should dress in a way that inspires my people to dress whatever the appropriate way for that organization is. And that today is very touchy. Back as I was growing up, it was a question of, can you wear jeans in the organization or should you wear a suit? Now, of course, that's changed. I need you all to understand that, but the leader sets the tone on that. And how do you treat people? I mentioned earlier, the shouting, the cursing, the screaming. Make sure that those examples aren't allowed to exist in your culture. And little by little, that culture will begin to improve. And you may or may not be there to experience that growth, but you can start it by doing some of the things that I just spoke about.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you so much. So I'm going to go ahead and ask this final question, and feel free to put any concluding thoughts on it. But if you could speak to your younger self, what advice would you give?
Well, I speak to my younger self, and I cuss him out whenever I get a chance because there are some opportunities that slip past me. But I also pat him on the back for having the wherewithal to understand some of the things that I was going through. And so probably the main thing is be the best student you can be at all levels. So that means kindergarten, elementary, middle, junior high, high school, college, postgraduate work. Be the best student. I didn't always have that view of education, but it's so rewarding and you get so much out of it when you're putting all you have into it. And today, a lot of young folk, especially in communities that look like me, don't value that work ethic in education because it's not talked about or valued in their community. If you have nobody at your house saying, you got to get your homework every day. You can't just do it one day of the week. You got to read books. You got to, one thing I would tell myself, but I tell my kids, I have two kids, I've told them, when you're entering a class, you should find the syllabus and read the first few chapters of every book that you're going to have during that semester. What a tremendous jump that gives you on the learning that's going to happen during that semester. Because invariably, the teacher is going to say, okay, for your next assignment, I need you to read first two chapters of the book. You've already read that. You can read it again, or you can read forward. That's a tip that I would continue to give myself because it gives you an advantage in the classroom. And so that and just, doing more. I don't think we can ever do too much. And so, some of the times we'll sit around and we'll mope when we're looking at our lives that we didn't do enough. And that is something that certainly has pestered me. I've done a lot, but I think I can always do more. And I want to have the attitude that I can always do more. And that more will almost always involve helping somebody else, pulling somebody else forward, straightening somebody out that needs to be straightened out, or contributing to the community in some positive way. So all of that, everything we talked about today is wrapped in leadership. And so if you want to say, you know, what do I want to be when I grow up? Just say, be a great leader. And being a great leader will involve people, process, performance, having a personal vision, a personal view of the world that's positive, setting a good example, and caring for the people that work with you, the people that are on your team, people in your family, the people in your community, people in the world. And so, Alex, that's a lot. But I really appreciate the opportunity to say that. And I don't know if I'm sad or not that y'all can't see me, because I'm probably much more expressive here by myself at my phone than I would be if I were on video. But I appreciate the opportunity.
Dr. Mack, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us. We've got great comments in the feed here and good feedback, saying great words of wisdom. Thank you. Great advice. Thank you. And this has been helpful. So thank you so much again. For folks who are listening, feel free to find more information about the White House Initiative for HBCUs and join their mailing list from their website, as well as continuing to follow and join for upcoming events with Black professionals in international affairs. So on that note, I'll go ahead and close out, and again, give a big thank you to our speaker, Dr. Arthur McMahan, and all those who all the viewers who have attended today.
Okay, thank you, Alex.
All righty, thank you. Have a good day, everyone.